So moving right into our next solo talk, we have an amazing woman as well. And this is really fun because I actually did a little bit of research on her. I got to check out her website. And I'll give you a little bit of intro about Alana Karen. So she is actually the director of search platforms at Google, and she's also an author. The fun thing about it is that she's not only in tech, but she takes all these in different places, you know, like applying it in all these different spaces. So not only being an author, not only being a speaker, but she has taken the opportunity to apply so much of the things that she's learned and made it accessible in so many different ways. From Google Ads to Google Search, Fiber, Google Grants, there's so many things that she's been leading the charge on and been able to developing. Really about creating more product development in the industry. She has actually spoken at conferences and at summits on technology, leadership, diversity and inclusion, talent, and innovation. If you wanted to check out Alana's book, it's called The Adventures of Women in Tech, How We Got Here and Why. It's actually going to be launching in a couple months in October 2020, and it aggregates hundreds of stories on these topics. So if you wanted to learn more, you totally can. Make sure you follow Alana. And without further ado, we have the glorious Alana Karen, the Director of Search Platforms at Google and author.
Yay, I'm here. Okay, thank you so much. Oh, thank you, everybody. Oh, okay, we're good. Thank you. This is totally working. I'm here. Awesome. So I am going to start off with a little bit more of an introduction about myself and why I wrote the book, and then talk a bit about what I learned writing the book, and then do a little short reading as well from the book, just to give you a little taste of it. And that's basically it for today, but I'm always happy to continue the dialogue offline. 15 minutes is such a short time to get into this. So I joined Google about 19 years ago on the front lines of AdWords, reviewing and approving ads, and answering customer email. If you were back then trying to run an ad on AdWords, I might have answered you. And shortly after I joined, I took on a project around policy, what ads we accept, what we don't accept. And that ended up turning into a 10-year career building out policy for ads and other products before I moved on to Google Fiber, where I built out customer support and installs for that product. And I've ultimately ended up in search, really navigating my way through tech. And what's interesting about my story, I think, is that I have a BA in history. And the joke I like to make about myself is that I liked history and creative writing in college, and I should have made no money. I was really my own worst enemy. But what was interesting was that I got, just on the side, really interested in web development at the time, really early web development, teaching myself HTML, a little bit of tinkering with JavaScript. And that's what led me down this road of thinking about the internet, thinking about how I could impact the world through this means, and led me to a startup, and then at first a webmaster job, then a startup, and then Google. So when I was looking around and reading articles about women in tech, it was just interesting. I wasn't necessarily seeing myself. I wasn't resonating with it. And I was thinking a lot about what, after 19 years at Google, I haven't had time to do that I like to do, and I do like writing. And I started to write and share on LinkedIn just some thoughts about my career and my development and performance feedback I'd received. And the feedback was so strong that people really enjoyed reading it. And I was talking with other women, and they were saying, hey, you know, it's great that there's stories about how that woman got to a CEO position or a COO position, but that's not what I want to do, and it doesn't resonate with me. And I had other women being like, it's great that we're talking more about the terrible experiences people have had, but that's not the challenge that I'm having. I'm having these other challenges. And so I started to get really interested in the middle. What are we dealing with as we navigate meaningful careers in tech? Where are we struggling? And where do we all come from? What are all of these different interesting backgrounds that we have? So what did I learn writing a book about, writing this book? I think that, I mean, first of all, I just boldly, brashly went into it. I was like, sure, I know women. I'll go write that book. I knew nothing about writing a book. I knew nothing about the book industry. And what I would say to all of you is that it's entirely doable. If this is a dream that you've had, no better time to write a book. You can self-publish, you can publish writing online. It's difficult, it's hard work. I did it on top of raising 3 kids and having a job, so I'm not gonna like say it was easy, but it is doable. And I think the more we get our voices out there, the more we can support all of each other. But the other stuff that I learned was really in talking with the women. And I interviewed, as I said, over 80 women, trying to get a real mix of backgrounds, paths, roles at Google, both technical and non-technical, or not just Google, sorry, roles in tech, both technical roles and non-technical, like being HR or finance within a technical company. What does that look like? And really trying to get like different experience levels, different roads, just to understand what is this full story that we're seeing in tech. And I'm going to run through a few main takeaways and then do a little reading so you get a taste of it. One is really that I think that we're still struggling with this feeling of belonging. As I was talking with women, there would often be a moment where they would say, I don't think of myself as technical. I don't think of myself as a technical leader. It took me a while to think of myself as a woman in tech. And that concept was really something that I tried to hammer on in the first part of the book, calling it, in fact, You Belong in Tech, the whole first part of the book. And I go through all the different backgrounds, the really different interesting paths that people took to ultimately get to tech, many not having programs to study or knowing that this is where they would end up, but finding their way through these leaps and chances that they took over the years. And then going more into the different personalities, the different ambitions that we have that really vary. People who want to give back in all kinds of different ways, but not necessarily in this sort of traditional, I need to get to the top, or I need to fit this mold, or be a cookie cutter of what I see around me in tech. And I think that that really ultimately linked a lot to what had drawn people to tech. Because what was really interesting, almost as if we'd rehearsed it, was that women said, I came to tech because I could change the world, because here was this way I could have amazing impact and work with amazing people and really influence where the world was going. And I loved technology. I loved what was happening, right? Or sometimes they would say like technology was almost besides the point. It was all about this way to change the world. And I find that that really then linked to part of the book that I get to, which is why do we stay and why do we leave? And I'll talk about that in a moment, but that guts was a real aha for me, I think, thinking that that would be super different across women about what drew them here, but seeing like, no, that was so common to their stories. And of course, there was a piece that was very practical around money, about this being a great industry to be in, that I don't think we should shy away from. If we're going to have diversity in tech, we're going to have people who think of it as a great means for security. And I am one of those people, having grown up without a lot of money, that certainly have had that in mind. That said, all of that positive stuff is tempered. There are pros and cons of being rare. And certainly we delve into that a ton in the book. I'm not going to dwell on that here. That could take an hour, but just we really dig into likability. What's the issues with women not being able to show the full spectrum of their personality, but always needing to be likable? Why do women feel so much pressure to help other women? Or what happens when women don't help women? And, also just having a family and life. But to get back to what I brought up earlier, the third part of the book really digs much more into what I learned about the power of the example. There were so many times when I was talking to a woman where they said, if she hadn't been on stage, I wouldn't have thought that was possible. If that person hadn't helped me, I wouldn't have seen this. If I hadn't had that social group when I was having a terrible experience on my team, I would have left my company. And all through it, it was clear that there were key tools around resilience and knowing how to market yourself and having support and having coaching that guided people through what they were going on and helped them stay or helped them decide when it was time to leave a company and move on. So I spend a lot of time on that. And ultimately, what I think I really took away from this whole experience was that the very things that bring us to tech are the reasons that we risk losing women from tech. If women no longer feel empowered to change the world because they get mired in a culture where they can't do that, or they get trapped in a role which is really tedious, or they end up with like 1,000 management responsibilities and it's no longer what they wanted, or they're struggling with all of the different requirements of what they have to do at home, or if life is just taking them elsewhere, right? They want to go pursue psychology or some radically different field. Those are the things that are going to ultimately risk women in tech. And I think that really helped me because I was seeing so many headlines that made it seem like it was inevitable that we would leave. But if you think of it that way, then there's things we can do, right? There's like, I can help the women on my team make sure they're having meaningful roles. I can think about what to do about the burden that women face often as primary home and sometimes breadwinners, right? Like I can think about those things and I can impact those things. And the book ends on that really positive note. I use a quotation from a woman, Jennifer Lim, in the book. She said, "It's almost in our DNA as a woman to give back, that our work has purpose, whether it's creating amazing tech to make the world a better place, creating an amazing team, or changing how well-being looks for employees. It's all about making a difference." And that has really stuck with me in thinking about those ahas. You know, when she said that, I said right away to her, that's going to go in the book. So I'm actually running a little bit long. Let me look to the moderator. Can I read like a 2-minute section of the book or should I wrap it up? Moderator, do you want to, if you don't say anything, I'm going to read it. Okay, I'm going to read it. I'm breaking the rules, everyone. Okay. Needing me to be me. In 2013, I attended a training for women directors, a first of its kind at Google. It served as a combination of retreat and learning. Its goal was to help us figure out how to sustain high performance amid the unique challenges we faced. Why worry about this? An annual happiness survey had shown weak scores for women in senior positions, not necessarily surprising given the overall burnout rate in the industry, and even non-industry data indicating women face burnout at a higher rate than men. The training was held at a nice resort, and I got a free massage. I felt like the winner from that survey. The training couldn't have come at a better time. Despite my success, the truth is that I was struggling. At the time, I was a director of growing team with 2 healthy children. But the question on my mind was still, who should I be? I looked around at my peers and saw many leaders, both male and female, who focused on business metrics or product definitions. You could throw a stone and hit someone who would debate a graph with you or pick apart data. Frankly, I was bored in those meetings. What I enjoyed was thinking about how to motivate people, how to build great teams, and how to grow employee happiness. Was I in the wrong place? Should I change my focus? Throughout the training, as we sat together and spoke as leaders, I heard what fellow women were struggling with, and their issues were interesting and exciting to me. At the core, so many of our problems were people problems, and that's what I really love. Another business or technical person wasn't going to be helpful at this moment. Instead, it was my ability to listen and coach others that would be useful. This seemed especially true as Google was growing larger and it increasingly faced problems of how to motivate and lead large groups. It was a real aha moment. I thought, I have to be me, and Google needs me to be me. That set me on the course of truly embracing being a people-focused leader and letting that guide me both in the day-to-day and in strategic decisions, even personal ones, like where I take my career. Knowing and embracing ourselves is critical but hard work. And this is covered more in Chapter 8, our Magic Toolbox, which you'll have to get the book to read. But hopefully that's a nice lead-in to everything we're talking about in terms of We Are Legacy. And there's certainly so many other examples from other women in the book. I just read one from me. And that's it. I'm wrapping up. Thank you.